what are you passionate about? Don't be afraid to go after it and to pursue it and to fight for it. It's worth it. You've only got one life to live.
This episode is brought to you by Big Storage Ventures. We are now inviting you to team up and partner alongside us. We bring our experience hunting storage deals and maximizing the self-storage asset to provide our partners with cash flow, tax benefits, and appreciation, all in one recession-resistant asset. Leverage our sister company, Big Ben's Moving Service, to fill your facility and give you an edge over the competition. Reach out to bigstorageventures@gmail.com or DM Big Storage Ventures on Instagram to team up. Welcome to the show, Jayden. Honestly, we've been really looking forward to this. You're the first Webster to come on besides Kallan, so that's a true honor.
Let's go.
We're excited to dive into your story a little bit more, man.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here with my brother.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you're here. Really excited about the journey you're going on and what's happening. So let's talk about the big news, what's going to happen right in the next few months, and we'll get into it.
Well, just tell everyone what I'm about to do.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll kind of preface, do a little background. So Jayden, he was cast as the lead role of West Side Story. It's an international tour, touring basically Europe and Asia. Mm-hmm. So it's a really big tour. A lot of you guys, if you follow or know Jayden, he's been in the game for a long time, working a lot in Utah, Southern Utah, Northern Utah, been in Hell Theater, Tuacahn, and everything in between. A lot of great shows. Love seeing your shows, love your work, and I know a lot of people do too, and they have a big following with that. So, this is a huge tour. It's a big break. It's really exciting. And one thing we want to talk about, because the podcast, we talk a lot about, people's passions and business, and I felt like it was relevant. Wanted to have you on because one, I'm really proud, really excited for you for this big show and for your tour and what it means for you and your career and where it's going to take you. And I obviously want to get into that, but just to tie in our podcast with who we bring on, Beyond Net Worth, it's individuals who in a whole range, but involved with following their passions and doing what is going to bring them the most joy or fulfillment. And of course, that some of those things involve money and their pursuit of their living and how they make a living. And a lot of it is doing something that it's not always about the money, doing something that, might not make the most, especially at first. So the parallels I take is just like bootstrapping him in business. A lot of these young entrepreneurs, they have to bootstrap to get there. They sacrifice so much. I mean, you talk about wanting to have the freedom and the time that comes from being a business owner, but a lot of times that doesn't come. It takes so much work and so much effort to get there. And I've seen that with you over the years, because in this industry, you have to work extremely hard. You have to sacrifice so much. You're giving up a lot of other things. I mean, there's so many other places you could go and do, and avenues you can to pursue your career. And, you've chosen the entertainment industry, mainly in theater, musical theater. And, you just landed a big 6-figure job, touring across the seas. And so it's really cool to see, this next step and where it's going to take you, and obviously the whole journey. So
I would ask a question, because a lot of people would discourage, because the arts is a high risk, high reward type of work environment. Talk to me about people in your life, people in your circles. Have they always been encouraging, or did some people tell you to get a day job? What's that part of it been like?
The people who know me well didn't really say things like that, go get another job. It's always the people who don't know you, who see you perform somewhere, whether I was in a show or whether I was in a concert. I've done a lot of concerts and parties and stuff like that. And those people will come up to you and be like, make sure you have a backup plan. You're like, thanks, I know.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. But my family and close friends, those who, mean most to me, have always been the most encouraging and have always believed in me. There's always those people in the industry who are, they're kind of weird about certain things, but I didn't, that kind of stuff doesn't really bother me. I'm not really phased.
That's a big deal because I think not having that out forces you to push harder. It relates to, this is one of the more, we just talked about your recent success, but it's one of the riskier industries. And so I feel like eliminating some of those plan Bs from your life, or like, how some people say, make sure you have a backup plan, right? Sometimes not having a backup plan really is what propels you forward.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the journey, the timeline. Has it kind of been a steady growth over time, or has it been more like a roller coaster? And what were the steps that you took to get this most recent, gig that you're doing over the next year?
Man, yeah, I feel like for me, it's been a really slow pace. And that's, comparing myself to people who have kind of right out of university kind of moved to New York and kind of booked stuff like right away, which I didn't do. I didn't move to New York for my first time until I was in my late 20s. And even then I was only there for a few months for audition season, and then came back home and worked at other theaters back in Utah, then moved back to the city during the pandemic. But prior to all that, it was just like, how many shows can I just get under my belt? How many roles can I get under my belt, whether it's in a community or a professional atmosphere? How much experience can I gather? How much training can I acquire? How much, how far can I push myself? And eventually you get to a point where like, okay, this here in Utah is only, providing so much for me opportunity wise. And so I have to move on somewhere else. And so I took that leap again in 2020, left back to the city, and obviously was only there for a few months before the pandemic hit. And that's, everyone just kind of went up in flames. And so I moved back home, but that was the year that I officially booked TuaCon, which was my first time booking that gig officially, which was also a big deal for me. Was trying to get into that theater for, I don't know, since I started auditioning for them in like 2009.
That's playing for the home team.
Yeah. But booked that in 2020, but then we had we canceled that season. Most theaters canceled, kind of closed 2020, but they kept all the same shows, and pretty much the entire cast originally they brought back last year, and was able to do that last year. And then I wasn't really keen on moving back to the city right away after TuaCon last season. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I went back up north and did a show up there at the Hell Center Theater in Orem. And then I came back home, was living here for the summer, had made plans to move to California. The job lined up, had visited with an acting coach out there, Zoom called with him, and had squared some things away, got my ducks in a row, and then this kind of opportunity just landed in my lap.
Who is it? Who's the company, and how'd they find you?
Sundance Productions, German production, who has produced and are producing a lot of musicals over there in Europe. I had submitted on, I believe, an app called Actors Access. So there's a couple ways you can find out auditions. And ever since the pandemic, things have become a lot more virtual for us actors. It's a lot of film-based auditions. So you'll just seek out the submissions online, or you'll go to these apps that you can subscribe to essentially.
Do you like that?
What part?
The app part, doing all the auditions virtually.
It's a love-hate relationship, I think. It's nice for those of us who are somewhat removed from New York City, and we can kind of film remotely and make sure that we're submitting for things and getting seen for things that we want to be seen for. But the magic of being in the room in person is irreplaceable. So, the adrenaline and, all that comes with and seeing somebody in person just translates completely different than it does on film. Most of us, are filming on our iPhones and splicing our videos together. And so it just doesn't, your talent just doesn't always translate in the same way. I think they obviously get the general idea, but there's a magic that is lost by doing it virtually. There's a convenience to it, but I didn't actually film anything for this audition. It was just, here's the audition, fill out this link. It was an Airtable link. And I sent in a headshot and resume, and I probably clipped on my video reel that I had already made previously this year. So I just threw that on there and completely forgot about it. And then weeks Even months might have gone by, and they reached out to me via email and were like, "Hey, we want you to come out to New York and audition for this lead role." And
Wow.
so I did. It's crazy.
So you didn't know when that, you just got the call back from the virtual audition, and then you go and to New York to do the full. How long was it before you got cast from that?
So they sent me an email Tuesday night, late Tuesday evening. I flew to New York Thursday, a day and a half later. Then I auditioned Friday morning. I had my initial audition and then the call back that afternoon. I stayed in New York that weekend, and then I believe it was Tuesday morning I got the call, which is a quick turnaround.
1 week.
Yeah, less than.
Life comes at you fast. What would you say to other people who are passionate about art that, what advice would you give them through the turbulent downtimes? Like, what kept you going, I guess, to get to that point?
I mean, a lot of things. I feel like I was always doing I was working on some sort of project. I didn't really care what caliber I was working as long as I was working, because experience is experience. And so, as long as I'm doing something, you find a sense of fulfillment, even though it's not this big spectacle of a thing. So that I always have been somewhat occupied doing that. Just a belief in yourself, I think, first and foremost is, a big deal. I've always believed I had the potential to do something bigger than whatever it was I was doing at the time. And a lot of that has come through cultivating my talent and, devoting so much of my life to it. And you'll hear a lot of actors say, like, if you can't see yourself do anything else, then do it, just commit. But like, if you commit, you have to really commit. And it's about refining your craft. It's about discovering who you are and embracing your identity and just so many things, but really cultivating and just nurturing that talent is one of the best things that you can do, and just never giving up. I mean, that was the biggest takeaway for me is that, I'm older and this is, finally come around. It's because I've been, persistent, it's just not giving up.
Yeah, just refusing to take no. And one word that I caught in what you're saying is you said identity. I think an identity shift is something that's universally relatable, that everyone needs to say, I'm this. I'm going to start a moving company. I'm going to start an accounting business. I'm going to start a production, And so what would you say are some of the keys when it comes to making that identity shift for you?
There's a lot of, especially when you're younger, there's a lot of like comparing yourself to other people. Especially in this industry, it's, who's the better dancer, who's the better singer, who is more technically trained, who's more classically, it's like, there's so many, it's so easy to compare yourself in this industry and just generally. And that was the biggest thing for me. And I think that's something that age has benefited me a lot, is that as I've gotten older and I've really kind of made these discoveries about who I am and what I like, and also like knowing my gift and my talent and what I'm capable of, I think really helped. I remember feeling that shift going to New York, I think in 2018, maybe it was 2020. Anyway, there was a shift in me where I just felt like, I know that I'm not like everybody here and I don't need to be. And that's a good thing. I think that's like hard for people to embrace, is you're like, well, how can I sing like so-and-so, or how can I act like, but it's like, you have a very unique personality, and that's something to be embraced, and it's something to be used in the audition room and in this industry because it benefits you. And the quicker you can figure out who you are, and what you like and what you're good at, and, it's going to just help you.
Yeah. What I'm taking away is understanding yourself, like who you are and your strengths. And it could be in any industry you're in. If you don't know what your strengths are and what you're good at, or if you're always like trying to be someone else, or like you said, if you're comparing to this and I want to be more like that, and it's like, well, what if my strengths are here and here? And you can do so much more if you're able to delegate, like, well, in business, if you're delegating certain things I'm not strong at, and me focusing on what mine are. You know, this is what I'm really good at. And I guess it's not easy to figure that out. How do you know, like, if you're thinking about quitting, giving up, like, because you have to fully commit, you know, and you never know, how long do you go? Or are there signs that are like, okay, maybe I'm not meant to pursue this? Because there's got to be, not everyone continues, not everyone makes it. The probability is extremely low. So what signs or flags would you say are there for someone to be like, maybe this is not the right path for me?
That's a good question. I think just like a sense of awareness, like self-awareness especially, is a good thing to have. And I spend a lot of time evaluating myself and reevaluating myself and analyzing myself and critiquing myself. I've always had like a pretty deep self-awareness about me and like what I was capable of. And when I first started singing and performing for people, it was apparent pretty early on that like people believed in me, even people that didn't know me. And it was kind of strange because like I was still figuring all that out. You know, it was like, why are these people like, you know, telling me I should be on Broadway? I don't even know what that means, you know, like I've never.
It's quite the compliment.
It is, but it's intimidating to hear in a way, because you're just like, I'm not there, you know, you're just starting on this journey. But that motivated me to keep going. But, you know, there are people who maybe aren't as naturally gifted, but they'll work so hard and they will be just as persistent. And they will never give up, and they'll also book things. They really will. But a lot of things can be taught, you know, and those people who don't give up and train enough and practice enough and get good enough where they can make it, do make it. So even if you're not like, you know, I'm the best naturally, you know, if you work hard enough, you know, but if you start having doubts, or you're like, well, maybe I'm passionate about this, you know, maybe there's something else that like I've been yearning to do, or that I feel like would be good for me,